Hi everyone, it's Justine, and I'm really excited to be participating today in the Pretty Pink Posh product release blog hop. If you check out the link below, you will see the blog hop and tons of inspiration featuring this new release, and there will be a giveaway at random stops on the hop for 4 $25 gift certificates. I'm going to be creating 2 cards using some of the new products that were released recently. I'm going to grab a piece of white paper and run the Scallop circle dies through my die cutting machine. These are not a part of the new release, but they are a Pretty Pink Posh shop exclusive, and I absolutely love them. So once I die cut those, I got a whole bunch of different size circles, and I know I'm going to be using some of them on my card today. Now normally I have to say I'm pretty good and I have a card idea in mind and I generally stick to it. However, I changed my mind several times on this card, so I'm excited to take you through my thought process. I grabbed a card base that was 11 by 4 1/4 that wasn't yet folded, and I decided to trace around the frame using the largest die that I just cut out as a guideline. I'm going to make sure that all of my stamping fits within this circle and that I avoid the edges while I get started. I'm going to be using this Happy Turkey stamp, and I'm using the 3 different leaves that come on this stamp set to create a background within the circle. I'm not going to show the whole thing while I'm stamping in Versamark ink, mainly because it would get a little bit boring because you can't even see what I'm stamping right now. But essentially Versamark is almost like a glue ink pad that's going to allow my embossing powder to stick to it. So once I was finished planning out the background and I had all 3 of the leaves twisted and turned within the circle, I knew that I was going to be covering the very middle, so it didn't really matter that I overlapped 2 of those leaves. I'm going to pour some super fine detail gold embossing powder from Ranger onto the cardstock, and I'm going to use a dry paintbrush here to get rid of any powder that's stuck to places where it shouldn't. Then I used my heat tool and I melted all the embossing powder on the background. Up until this point, this was my original plan as well. Then I was simply going to fold up my card base. I can't find my bone folder, I just moved on the weekend. And then I put the circle die here and glued it down. And then I was going to put a little piece in the middle that I'd also cut out from this die, stamp a turkey on it, and call it a day. However, I decided once I had done that, it looked quite boring actually, and it didn't really have a lot of pop. So I thought that I would switch things up a little bit. So instead of stamping the turkey, I stamped the Happy Turkey Day, the sentiment itself. And that's where I decided to change my mind again, and I decided to make a shaker card. So now I'm pretty much finished changing my mind. I went ahead and I used my 3D foam tape here to cut little pieces to go around the frame. I had already glued the frame once around the card already, so that meant I had to die cut another one. I'm then going to put as well 3D foam tape around the sentiment because I'm going to be placing something on top, so I'm actually going to cover up what I just did. I'm going to shake some of the gold confetti, the metallic gold confetti that comes in this Pretty Pink Posh release here, and I'm going to push it along the sides. It doesn't stick too much to the 3D foam tape, however, I would recommend actually pouring this first and then removing the back of the tape. It just makes things a lot easier. So once that was all finished, I went ahead and added some Tombow Mono liquid adhesive along another die cut frame from the die cut I cut in the beginning. I had to cut it out again. And then I added a piece of acetate that I just roughly cut out so that it fit within the frame. It's going to be covered by the frame anyway, so if your edges are jagged, it's not a big deal. If I had some foam, so some craft foam, I would actually just have die cut the foam and use that as a frame instead of doing all of these little pieces of 3D foam tape. However, I don't have any, so I happily cut that 3D tape. So I placed the frame directly over top of the frame I did before. Sorry, I got my head in there a little bit while I was trying to place it. And then I did the Happy Turkey Day once again, but this time I embossed it in gold. So then I attached the piece with the gold embossing here onto the front of the card. I didn't show the gold embossing because I did the exact same thing I did on the background and I don't want to bore you. So I stuck that here in the middle and now I have this really fabulous wreath style shaker card. I love the way that it turned out, but it did need a little extra something. So this time I grabbed the Stitch Foliage die and I die cut these really pretty leaves that have this gorgeous stitched pattern on them. And what I decided to do was actually emboss these in gold ink as well. And this creates really cool embellishments. So what I did was I grabbed my Versamark ink and I went over the entire leaf as much as I could with the ink to make sure that it was saturated. My ink pad is a little bit dry and I have a new one on the way, so I'm probably adding more layers than you would normally need. After that's finished, I flipped over my paper so the embossing powder doesn't get stuck all over the Versamarked areas, and I added the powder to each of the leaves. I then picked them up with a pair of tweezers and I heat embossed them. You could repeat this process actually a couple of times and make the embossing super thick on the leaves, and it looks really cool too, almost like metal embellishments. But I just decided to stick to the one. I didn't want to distract too much from the shaker card. Once the powder was all melted, I had these two fabulous leaves. Be sure to let them dry a little bit and cool off before you touch them because you'll get your fingerprints on them if the powder isn't fully dry. Then I just added those simply to the bottom of the card, and it really just brings out the gold of the sentiment, the gold confetti, and the gold background. I love the elegance of having this gold and white card. Here's a final look at the card. I decided I had shaker cards on the brain. I just had to use these confetti, the silver and the gold that I got, so I went ahead and did this one as well. This is the stitched foliage die here in its entirety. It comes with a pumpkin and 4 sets of different types of leaves. It's super versatile, the stitching is gorgeous, and I have to say, for a leaf die, this is probably my favorite ever made. So once I separate these, I'm going to use these as a window for my shaker cards. So I laid out 3 of the dies on a piece of craft cardstock, and I held them in place using some post-it tape and ran them through my Big Shot. This is just going to hold everything in place so that it doesn't shift while I'm die cutting. These are going to be the windows for my shaker card when I'm all said and done. So once I remove those die cut pieces, these leftovers I'm going to put off to the side because I'm going to end up using them later. As it was very similar to the first card, I took a card base and I went ahead and I traced the leaves using a pencil on the inside so I knew where my windows were going to be. For the parts that repeat for the shaker card, I am going to speed you up quite a bit so we save some time. On the card base, now that I have my leaves shaped and I have them traced here onto my card, I know exactly where I need to put the 3D foam tape, around those pencil edges, but then also leaving a white border along the edge. So I'm going to cut in half and paper piece them all together so that I have a nice frame around each one. This one here is a lot easier to do than the last one. So once all the tape was laid down, I have these really cool triangles here as a shape to make sure that each of the windows has its own shaker bits. So I took the gold and as well as the silver and I dumped them into the area, and I followed my own advice this time and kept the back of the tape on so that it doesn't stick to the tape and create extra work for me. To the gold confetti, I'm going to add some silver as well, and then I'm going to remove all the pieces of the tape here so that I'm able to start putting on my acetate and the front of the card. Now I'm ready to add my card front. Be sure to add the acetate though before you add the card front. I have the acetate on here right now, but it's a little difficult to see, and for some reason that part didn't record. So you're going to put a piece of acetate over the leaves and then put it on top just like what I did here. Then the last part I need to do is just add the embellishments and stamp my sentiment. If I would have had this card planned out, I would have stamped my sentiment before adding the shaker windows onto it. However, with my mini Misty, if you do forget, it's actually not too bad of an issue. So I'm going to stamp as well the Happy Turkey Day like I used on the first card in some brown ink. As the final embellishment, because I thought it looked a little bit plain right now, I added some of those leaves we cut out on the window to the sides here and let them peek out the sides of the card. I think it looks really cool in the end, and I love the way that it shakes. Everything just falls so nicely, and all the confetti just goes around the card, and it's so cool. I hope you enjoyed today's 2 shaker card tutorials and that you'll subscribe to my channel there by clicking over on the right. You can check out my blog for the new release, Blog Hop on the left, and more videos there recommended for you.